My name is Madison Clark, and at 33 years old, I never imagined my world would collapse in the most humiliating way possible. I had built what I thought was a stable life here in Portland, Oregon, with my husband Daniel, an architect I trusted with every corner of my heart. Then, my younger sister Lily asked to move in temporarily after her latest heartbreak. I thought it was the right thing to do. Sisters take care of each other, right? But everything changed on a quiet afternoon when I took Lily to her prenatal appointment. The doctor looked up at us, smiled warmly, and asked, "Is Daniel joining us today as the father on record?" In that second, the air was sucked out of the room. My hands turned cold, my heart hammered, as I stared at the name Daniel Clark, printed neatly across the top of Lily's medical chart. My husband, my sister, the betrayal I had never even thought possible, staring me straight in the face. I froze in my chair, too stunned to speak. Lily's eyes flickered with something. Surprise, guilt, maybe even pride, before she quickly forced a trembling laugh. "Oh, there must be some mistake," she stammered. But the damage was already done. The doctor moved on, unaware of the earthquake that had just erupted inside my chest. I remember gripping my purse so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I remember the way the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, sharp and merciless, as if the whole universe wanted me to see the truth. People always say you can feel betrayal before you know it, that you sense the cracks long before they split wide open. Looking back now, maybe I did. Maybe I had ignored the late nights, the whispered conversations, the way Lily's laughter lingered too long in Daniel's presence. But at that moment, none of the hints mattered anymore. The truth was carved into that medical chart. My sister was carrying my husband's child. Before I take you deeper into this story, I want you to pause and ask yourself this. If you were in that doctor's office, staring at your own sister's ultrasound screen, while your husband's name was listed as the father, what would you do? Would you scream? Would you walk away? Or would you, like me, sit in silence as the weight of it all crushed your chest? Growing up with Lily, who is 4 years younger than me, was never simple. From the day she was born, our parents bent over backward to keep her happy. While I was expected to be the responsible one, Lily floated through life, always taking, always demanding, always convinced the world owed her something. Some sibling rivalry is normal, but with Lily, it was more than that. She wasn't just competitive. She was hungry for anything that was mine. When I inherited our grandparents' cabin in Seattle, the place where I had cared for them until their last breath, Lily's smile never reached her eyes. She congratulated me, but I could feel the bitterness rolling off her like smoke. I should have known then that some part of her would never rest until she took what I loved most. And yet, nothing could have prepared me for that ultrasound room, for the way her pregnancy, something that should have been a moment of joy, became the sharpest knife in my back. So, if you are still with me, lean in, because this story is not just about betrayal. It is about the way blood ties can twist into chains. It is about survival when your own family becomes the enemy. And it begins with that single, devastating question. Is Daniel joining us today as the father? When people ask about my childhood, I usually smile and say it was ordinary. But that is not the whole truth. Growing up in Seattle, my life was anything but balanced. As the oldest daughter, I carried expectations on my shoulders from the time I could hold a broom. My parents believed I was the responsible one, the girl who would take care of things, while my younger sister, Lily, was treated like delicate porcelain. From the start, the pattern was clear. If Lily threw a tantrum, my parents rushed to soothe her. If I cried, I was told to toughen up. If Lily wanted the bigger slice of cake, it was handed to her without question. My role was always to give, hers was always to receive. Maybe that is common in families, but for me, it planted seeds of resentment I tried for years to bury. Still, I loved her. I really did. I was the one who helped her with homework when she was too distracted. I was the one who whispered comfort when her first crush broke her heart. I even taught her how to drive in our grandparents' old Chevy when our parents said she was too reckless. I played the part of the dependable big sister, even when her jealousy sometimes seeped through. The biggest test of our bond came when our grandparents grew old and sick. I was the one who stayed with them, cooking meals, managing medicines, holding their hands during long nights. Lily would breeze in with flowers or chocolates, staying only long enough to post a smiling photo online. Everyone praised her for being the sweet granddaughter, but it was me scrubbing the kitchen at midnight, me changing the sheets when our grandmother was too weak to stand. When they passed away, it was written in their will that I would inherit the wooden cabin they had cherished for decades. It was no mansion, but it was sturdy, full of memories and full of love. The cabin became my safe place. To me, it was more than just property. It was the reward for years of sacrifice. To Lily, though, it was something else. I could see it in her eyes the day the lawyer read the will. Her smile was tight, her jaw clenched. She hugged me, but her arms felt cold. She never said it out loud, but I knew. She believed that cabin should have been hers. The rivalry between us never exploded into open war. Instead, it was like a river running underneath the ground, invisible, but always moving. She compared herself to me constantly. If I got a promotion, she would complain about her bad boss. If I bought a new dress, she would whisper about how it did not suit me. Every achievement of mine was a reminder of her failures. Sometimes I wonder if Daniel saw any of this. Did he notice how her jokes about me always carried a sharp edge? Did he notice how her compliments to him always lingered just a second too long? Back then, I dismissed it all as harmless. I thought, she is my sister. She would never truly hurt me. But deep down, I think I always knew Lily was keeping score. And on the day she showed up at my doorstep, years later, suitcase in hand, asking to stay just for a little while, that old rivalry would finally surface in a way I could never have imagined. Because what I opened my door to that day was not just my little sister in need. It was something far more dangerous. When I first met Daniel, it felt like the universe was giving me a second chance. We were both working on a mixed-use development project downtown. He was the architect with blueprints rolled under his arm, and I was the financial coordinator, trying to make sure every number lined up. At first, we were just colleagues, exchanging polite nods in meetings. But little by little, his steady nature drew me in. He was not flashy, not arrogant, not the kind of man Lily usually gravitated toward. Daniel was reliable. He listened when I spoke, remembered small details, and never once made me feel like I was invisible. After 2 years of late-night coffees, shared deadlines, and hesitant smiles, we fell in love. We married in a quiet ceremony. Nothing grand, just close friends and family. I thought I had found my safe harbor. He loved the old cabin as much as I did, and together we poured sweat and savings into turning it into our forever home. New floors, fresh paint, a small garden where I planted herbs my grandmother once grew. I thought, at last, I had built the life I deserved. Meanwhile, Lily was sliding in the opposite direction. She tried a string of jobs: bartender, yoga instructor, even a brief attempt at selling real estate. But none lasted. She racked up credit card debt, borrowed from our parents, and burned through friendships as easily as she switched apartments. Every phone call from her carried some new disaster. I listened. I advised. But there was always a wall between us. I was building. She was unraveling. Daniel would sometimes frown after her calls, asking, "Why do you keep bailing her out?" I would shrug and say, "Because she is my sister." What I did not tell him was that part of me always felt guilty. Guilty for inheriting the cabin. Guilty for having the stable career, the stable marriage. Guilty for being the one who seemed to get what she wanted, while Lily kept losing her grip. For a while, I believed we had found balance. Daniel and I laughed in our kitchen, planned small weekend trips, argued about silly things like where to hang a picture frame. But there were cracks, faint hairline cracks, that I ignored. Daniel stayed late at work more often. His phone lit up at odd hours, and sometimes he would silence it quickly. When I asked, he said it was just the firm, another urgent deadline. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Lily's voice echoed in my head even when she was not around. She used to tease me growing up, saying, "One day I'll take something of yours, and you won't even see it coming." I had laughed it off, brushing it aside as childish jealousy. But there were nights when Daniel's side of the bed was still empty at midnight, and those words would creep back like a ghost. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing. After all, Daniel was not the type to wander, and Lily was too lost in her own chaos to be a real threat. Or at least, that is what I told myself. Then one evening, while clearing out a drawer in our study, I found something wedged beneath a stack of old receipts. It was small, almost insignificant at first glance, but it made my stomach tighten as soon as I touched it. The object I had found in the drawer was nothing more than a silver hair clip, the kind Lily used to wear. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she must have left it behind during a visit. But when I turned it over in my hand, I saw Daniel's handwriting on a folded scrap of paper tucked inside. It only said, "We'll figure this out. Just trust me." My heart pounded. But before I could question him, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway pulled me back. Daniel walked in, smiling as if nothing in the world was wrong. A week later, Lily called me late at night. Her voice was breaking, sobbing about how her boyfriend had left her, how she had nowhere to go. I could almost picture her sitting on the curb with her bags, mascara streaking down her face. Every part of me screamed, "Don't do it." But I also remembered how many times I had turned her away before. Against the tightness in my chest, I said, "Come stay with us. Just until you get back on your feet." The very next day, she arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of makeup, and that familiar dramatic flair that made everything feel like a performance. Daniel carried her bags inside, insisting we could make space. I wanted to believe this was temporary, a small detour in our marriage. 2 months, I told myself. 2 months, and she'll move on. But almost instantly, the balance in our home began to shift. Lily took over the living room, with her clothes draped across the couch. She spent long mornings drinking coffee in her robe, chatting with Daniel as if I wasn't even in the house. She laughed too loud at his jokes, touched his arm too often, and he didn't exactly pull away. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that I was jealous, paranoid, or simply tired from work. Still, The unease grew heavier each day. I noticed the way Daniel lingered in the kitchen when she cooked, even though he rarely joined me there. I noticed the way she asked him questions about architecture, her voice light and curious, as if she cared deeply about his projects. I noticed how easily he opened up to her. When with me, he often stayed quiet. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Lily laughed about something and leaned over to wipe a smudge of sauce from Daniel's chin with her finger. My stomach churned. Daniel gave her a small smile, almost embarrassed, then looked at me as if to gauge my reaction. I forced a laugh, but inside, I felt something breaking. That night, lying awake in bed, I couldn't escape a single question. Had I let a serpent into my home, disguised as my own sister? People often ask what they would do in situations like this, but the truth is, you don't always act the way you imagine. You tell yourself you'd confront it immediately, draw a hard line, shut the door. But when it's your own blood, when it's someone you grew up protecting, it's harder than you think. You second guess. You give excuses. You wait for proof, even when your instincts are screaming. So tell me, if it were your sibling, would you have let them move in, even when something inside you whispered danger? Would you have trusted your gut, or, like me, tried to silence it, hoping you were wrong? Because one night, when Daniel came home later than usual and Lily's bedroom door stayed locked, I realized I could no longer silence mine. The change in Daniel was gradual, like a dimmer switch turning down the light one notch at a time. At first, it was a late meeting here and there. Then, dinners went cold on the table more nights than not. He used to call if he was running late, but now the explanations came after the fact, vague and rushed. "Sorry, the firm kept me," he'd say, kissing my forehead, as if that gesture could erase the questions burning in my mind. And Lily, she became comfortable far too quickly. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find her wearing Daniel's gray hoodie. She looked up, smiled casually, and said, "Oh, I just grabbed it because it was chilly." The sight of her, wrapped in something that smelled like him, made my stomach twist. I laughed it off, but the sound didn't feel like mine. It got worse. I would walk past the living room and hear them laughing in hushed tones, only for the room to fall silent when I entered. Once, I caught Daniel teaching her how to sketch a floor plan at the dining table, their heads bent close together. She looked up at me with a smile that was too sweet, too smug, as if daring me to object. The whispers grew louder inside my head, and I couldn't ignore them any longer. One night, as Daniel showered, his phone lit up on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked, I know that, but my hands moved on their own, trembling as I picked it up. A message glowed on the screen. From an unsaved number I recognized all too well. "Thanks for last night. The baby will know his dad loves him." My breath caught, my vision blurred. I read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. When Daniel came out of the bathroom, I confronted him, my voice shaking. He paled, grabbed the phone, and stammered, "It's not what you think. She must have sent that as a joke, or maybe it's a mistake." His denial was quick, desperate, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted to the floor, to the walls, anywhere but to mine. I wanted to scream, to throw him out, to drag Lily from her room and demand the truth. Instead, I swallowed my rage and stood frozen, watching him spin excuses. He swore nothing happened, swore he loved me, swore Lily was confused. But the weight in my chest told me otherwise. The house felt like a stage set for a cruel play, every corner holding a secret I wasn't meant to see. I lay awake at night listening to footsteps in the hallway, doors creaking open, whispers too faint to make out. I told myself I was imagining things, but my instincts screamed louder each day. I began to notice small details. Lily glowing more than any pregnant woman I had ever seen. Daniel's hand brushing hers when he thought I wasn't looking. And then, the way she looked at me sometimes, almost triumphant, as if she had already won a game I didn't know I was playing. I kept telling myself I needed proof, solid proof, not just suspicions, not just a message he could shrug off as a mistake, something undeniable. And I got it, in the most devastating way possible, on the day I sat beside Lily at her ultrasound appointment. The day of Lily's ultrasound felt strangely ordinary at first. The sky was gray, the kind of Portland morning where mist clings to your skin, and traffic hums like white noise. Lily had asked me to come with her since Daniel was busy with work. I agreed, partly because I still wanted to believe in family, partly because I needed answers. Maybe sitting in that sterile room, watching her baby appear on the screen, would ease the storm inside me. Maybe it would prove I was wrong. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. Lily scrolled on her phone, pretending not to notice how stiffly I sat beside her. When the nurse called her name, she clutched my hand, whispering, "Thanks for being here." Her grip felt too strong, too rehearsed. We followed the nurse into a small room, walls lined with cheerful posters about prenatal vitamins and smiling families. I sat in the chair near the bed, clutching my purse like a shield. Lily lay back, her shirt lifted, her skin pale under the fluorescent lights. The doctor entered with a practiced smile, introducing himself, then squirting cold gel onto Lily's stomach. The machine beeped softly as the wand moved across her skin. I should have been focused on the image flickering on the screen, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. Then the doctor, glancing at the chart, asked casually, "Will Daniel be joining us today as the father on record?" The words sliced through the air. I froze. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, but no, the chart lay right there, and I saw his name printed in black ink. Daniel Clark, my husband, listed as the father of my sister's child. The room tilted. My hands went numb. I turned to Lily. Her eyes widened, feigning shock, but the mask slipped too quickly. For half a second, there was something else there, an almost satisfied glint before she forced a trembling laugh. "Oh, there must be a mistake," she said, her voice too high, too thin. The doctor barely noticed, already focused on the ultrasound screen. "Healthy heartbeat," he said cheerfully, pointing to the small, pulsing image. My stomach twisted. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the tile. "I need air," I muttered. Lily reached for me, her hand slick with gel, but I pulled away. The smell of antiseptic, the buzz of the lights, the rhythmic beeping, it all pressed in until I felt like I would collapse. I walked out of that clinic knowing the truth could no longer be denied. My husband and my sister had crossed a line so deep it shattered everything I thought was unbreakable. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my hands ached. Images blurred past. Traffic lights, pedestrians, storefronts. But none of it registered. All I could see was Daniel's name, printed beside the word "Father." When I finally pulled into the driveway, his car was already there. The sight of it sent a shiver through me. My pulse quickened, because I realized something chilling. He had no idea I knew. When I walked into the house that evening, Daniel was in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water. He looked up with that familiar, easy smile, the one I had once trusted without question. "Hey, you're back early," he said. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream at him, to throw the ultrasound chart in his face, but instead, I just stood there, silent, watching him as if he were a stranger, wearing my husband's skin. Later, when Lily came home, the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. I finally broke. "How long?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. Daniel froze. Lily dropped her purse and glanced at him before saying, "It was only once, an accident." Her tone was defensive, but there was no shame in her eyes. Daniel swallowed hard, adding, "It didn't mean anything. Please, Madison, try to understand." Understand? I had carried this family for years, sacrificed for both of them. And now they wanted me to understand that my sister was carrying my husband's child. My laughter came out bitter, hollow. The following days blurred into arguments and tears. My parents called, urging me to be reasonable. My mother said, "Think about the baby, Maddie. It needs a father." My father added, "Lily made a mistake, but you've always been the strong one. Don't punish her for being weak." Their words stung more than I could admit. Even now, they were shielding her, asking me to carry the weight of her choices. But I was done carrying. One evening, I sat them both down at the dining table, the same table where we had once celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. In my hand were the property documents to the house. Calmly, I slid them across the table. "This house is in my name," I said firmly. "You have 30 days to pack your things and leave." Lily's mouth fell open. Daniel's face drained of color. "Madison, please," he whispered. "We can fix this." Lily's eyes burned with fury, her voice trembling as she said, "You can't just throw me out. I'm pregnant." But my resolve didn't falter. Pregnant or not, you won't raise that child under my roof. For days, the house turned into a battlefield of slammed doors and whispered phone calls. Daniel tried to win me back with apologies, flowers, even dinners he hadn't cooked in years. Lily, on the other hand, sulked and lashed out, accusing me of being heartless. Yet nothing they said could touch the steel I had built around my heart. And then, while sorting through a stack of papers in the living room, I found it, her journal, left carelessly under the couch cushion. I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity and rage guided my hands. Page after page, her handwriting spilled with venom. She wrote about her jealousy since childhood, how she had always been second best, how she dreamed of taking what was mine. And then I saw it, scrawled in thick ink, almost triumphant. Finally, I have what Madison always had, her man, her future, her life. My hands shook as I read those words. It was never just a mistake. It was never just one night. It had always been her plan. The 30 days I had given them stretched out like a season of storms. Every morning, I woke to the sound of slammed doors, whispers behind walls, and the faint echo of guilt lingering in the air. Yet with each passing day, my resolve only grew stronger. I had spent too many years sacrificing myself for others, too many nights convincing myself that betrayal was just my imagination. Now the truth was written in ink, in Lily's journal, in the baby she carried. There was no undoing it. Daniel left first. He packed his suits and books into neat rows, his hands trembling as he folded shirts I had once ironed with care. At the door, he turned to me with pleading eyes. "Maddie," he said softly, "I don't know how we got here. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. For a moment, I almost wanted to believe him. But then I remembered that ultrasound screen, the doctor's calm voice, and Lily's smirk she tried to hide. My silence was the only answer I had left. He drove away without looking back. Lily lingered. She wandered through the house like a restless ghost, dragging out her packing, hoping I might soften. She left her coffee mugs half full on the counter, her clothes spilling from open suitcases, as if she could claim space by refusing to leave it clean. On the final day, she stood at the door with one hand on her swollen belly, her face twisted with anger, but her words carried something else. "You'll regret this, Madison. Families are supposed to stick together." I looked at her, my own sister, and felt the ache of every memory we had shared. Playing in our grandparents' garden, whispering under blankets at night, believing we would always protect each other. But those memories were ghosts now, buried beneath layers of envy and betrayal. "Families are supposed to love one another," I answered quietly. "But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you." She scoffed, turned away, and left without another word. When the door shut behind her, the silence that followed was overwhelming. For the first time in months, the house was truly mine again. No whispers, no footsteps in the hall, no shadows moving where they didn't belong. Just me, the old cabin, and the quiet hum of healing waiting to begin. The weeks that followed were not easy. Grief came in waves, anger rose and fell, and some nights I lay awake, wondering if I had been too harsh. But with every sunrise, I felt a little stronger. I repainted the kitchen, replanted the garden, and filled the rooms with music instead of arguments. Slowly, the house became a sanctuary again, a place that carried both the pain of what had happened and the promise of what could still come. I also began therapy, sitting across from a kind woman who reminded me that betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Her words, gentle yet firm, reminded me of a truth I had buried for years. My worth was not defined by Daniel's choices or Lily's envy. My worth was my own. In the quiet of those evenings, I found myself turning back to the faith my grandparents had once instilled in me. They used to say that when people wound you deeply, it isn't God abandoning you. It's God protecting you from those who were never meant to stay. One verse echoed in my heart as I tried to make sense of it all. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Psalm 34:18. For the first time, I understood. My heart had been broken, yes, but I was not abandoned. I was being drawn closer to strength I could not find in myself alone. In prayer, I didn't ask for revenge or punishment. I asked for peace. I asked for the courage to let go without bitterness. And slowly, that peace came. Not all at once. Not like a switch being flipped, but like dawn breaking after a long night. I began to see that losing Daniel and Lily was not just an ending. It was also a beginning, a chance to rebuild, to reclaim the dignity that betrayal had tried to steal from me. Now, when I walk through the halls of this house, I no longer see shadows of what was lost. I see light, possibility, and freedom. I know there will be love again someday, maybe even joy, where pain once lived. The lesson I carry is simple but powerful. Forgiveness doesn't mean welcoming someone back into your life. Sometimes forgiveness is the quiet decision to set yourself free. And with God's hand guiding me, I am learning that dignity, faith, and self-respect are treasures no betrayal can take away. Because in the end, I didn't just choose survival. I chose grace.